Hey, Professor Cat here, Dr. K again. Uh, this video is going to look at chapter 2 in our victimology book. It's a fascinating chapter, and it talks about the history of victimology and when it first became apparent that the sufferings of victims was important, and kind of how that morphed and changed over the years. I don't think it's ever been not viewed as important, but I do believe that in more recent years, it's become been taken a lot more seriously than it may have been sometimes in the past. The other section in chapter 2 that's actually really fascinating is about survivors and the difference in the use of the word survivor versus victim. I prefer to refer to myself as a survivor, someone who was a victim and made the necessary changes and took the steps to try to heal and process that trauma. So I want to tell you a story about my friend Fred. So Fred lives in Uganda, and I met him several years ago. He had come to the United States, and I still talk to him periodically. He's on my Facebook. It's awesome. So inspiring. So I want to talk a little bit about the victimology of Fred and how Fred became a survivor. I'll try to keep this short, but this is such a cool story. So Fred is Ugandan, like I mentioned, and unfortunately, when he was young, both of his parents died of AIDS. And he was then taken in by his grandmother, who is pretty elderly. And they lived on a farm that belonged to his family, him and his grandmother. And one day, I believe he was about 11 or 12, he called out for his grandmother to wake her up in the morning, and she didn't respond. And unfortunately, Fred's grandmother had passed away. So he then lived on the farm by himself for a while until his farm was taken away by some Ugandan warlords there. It's a very strife-ridden country. And so Fred was not only familyless, but he was also homeless. And Fred, however, refused to become just a victim. So first of all, he was obviously very, very poor. He didn't even own a pair of shoes until he was a freshman in high school. And the shoes he owned were too large. Kids used to tease him about it. But Fred managed to overcome those circumstances and overcome being a victim of these warlords who took away his livelihood, the subsistence he was getting from the farm. That's how he fed himself. So first of all, he would walk several miles to school every day, even when his grandmother was alive. But once she passed in Uganda, you have to actually pay money to go to high school. So he worked out a deal with the priests there that he would clean for them and take care of their properties in exchange for a place to sleep and being able to go to school. So instead of letting being a victim determine his circumstances, he took control of that situation. And he's one of the most inspiring people I think I've ever met. And he did graduate from high school. He now owns more than one pair of shoes, but not much. He's also involved in saving young girls from arranged marriages and some other dicey situations over there in Uganda. And he's become a school teacher. So victims do not have to remain victims. We turn into survivors by adapting to these changes, a lot of which we can't do anything about. We're handed this, and we have to be able to handle it by the means necessary that we can. So that can include things like talk therapy, changing our circumstances, even sometimes talking with a friend can help us get through this. Studying victimology is another way to go from being a victim to being a survivor, and not letting those actions that have been perpetuated against us determine that the rest of our life is not going to be that great, because there are so many opportunities. If we're waking up the next day, that's a new opportunity to do something new, even with the side effects and the ongoing issues related to that trauma. And I don't know about you, but reading or hearing about survivors like my friend Fred really helps me put into perspective my own situation, and helps me be able to move forward in my life, because I see how much other people have overcome. And I hope you find that story just as inspiring as I do. So I'll see you in class. And as always, feel free to reach out if you have any questions.